Part 1, Chapter 9 of The Idiot. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Martin Geeson. The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Translated by Eva M. Martin. Part 1, Chapter 9. Silence immediately fell on the room. All looked at the prince as though they neither understood nor hoped to understand. Gania was motionless with horror. Nastasia's arrival was a most unexpected and overwhelming event to all parties. In the first place, she had never been before. Up to now she had been so haughty that she had never even asked Gania to introduce her to his parents. Of late she had not so much as mentioned them. Gania was partly glad of this, but still he had put it to her debit in the account to be settled after marriage. He would have borne anything from her rather than this visit, but one thing seemed to him quite clear. Her visit now, and the present of her portrait on this particular day, pointed out plainly enough which way she intended to make her decision. The incredulous amazement with which all regarded the prince did not last long, for Nastasia herself appeared at the door and passed in, pushing by the prince again. "At last I've stormed the citadel! Why do you tie up your bell?" she said merrily, as she pressed Gania's hand, the latter having rushed up to her as soon as she made her appearance. "What are you looking so upset about? Introduce me, please." The bewildered Gania introduced her first to Varia, and both women, before shaking hands, exchanged looks of strange import. Nastasia, however, smiled amiably, but Varia did not try to look amiable, and kept her gloomy expression. She did not even vouchsafe the usual courteous smile of etiquette. Gania darted a terrible glance of wrath at her for this, but Nina Alexandrovna mended matters a little when Gania introduced her at last. Hardly, however, had the old lady begun about her highly gratified feelings, and so on, when Nastasia left her and flounced into a chair by Gania's side in the corner by the window, and cried, "Where's your study? And where are the lodgers? You do take in lodgers, don't you?" Gania looked dreadfully put out, and tried to say something in reply, but Nastasia interrupted him. "Why, where are you going to squeeze lodgers in here? Don't you use a study? Does this sort of thing pay?" she added, turning to Nina Alexandrovna. "Well, it is troublesome, rather," said the latter, "but I suppose it will pay pretty well. We have only just begun, however." Again Nastasia Philipovna did not hear the sentence out. She glanced at Gania and cried, laughing, "Ah, what a face! My goodness, what a face you have on at this moment!" Indeed, Gania did not look in the least like himself. His bewilderment and his alarmed perplexity passed off, however, and his lips now twitched with rage as he continued to stare evilly at his laughing guest, while his countenance became absolutely livid. There was another witness who, though standing at the door motionless and bewildered himself, still managed to remark Gania's death-like pallor and the dreadful change that had come over his face. This witness was the prince, who now advanced in alarm and muttered to Gania, "Drink some water, and don't look like that." It was clear that he came out with these words quite spontaneously, on the spur of the moment, but his speech was productive of much, for it appeared that all Gania's rage now overflowed upon the prince. He seized him by the shoulder and gazed with an intensity of loathing and revenge at him, but said nothing, as though his feelings were too strong to permit of words. General agitation prevailed. Nina Alexandrovna gave a little cry of anxiety. Ptitsin took a step forward in alarm. Colia and Ferdishenko stood stock still at the door in amazement. Only Varia remained coolly watching the scene from under her eyelashes. She did not sit down, but stood by her mother with folded hands. However, Gania recollected himself almost immediately. He let go of the prince and burst out laughing. "Why, are you a doctor, prince, or what?" he asked as naturally as possible. "I declare you quite frightened me. Nastasia Philipovna, let me introduce this interesting character to you, though I have only known him myself since the morning." Nastasia gazed at the prince in bewilderment. "Prince? He a prince? Why, I took him for the footman just now, and sent him in to announce me. Ha, 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 ha! Isn't that good?" "Not bad, that, not bad at all," put in Ferdishenko. "Se non è vero. I rather think I pitched into you too, didn't I? Forgive me, do. Who is he, did you say? What prince? Muishkin," she added, addressing Gania. "He is a lodger of ours," explained the latter. "An idiot." The prince distinctly heard the word half whispered from behind him. This was Ferdishenko's voluntary information for Nastasia's benefit. "Tell me, why didn't you put me right when I made such a dreadful mistake just now?" continued the latter, examining the prince from head to foot without the slightest ceremony. She awaited the answer as though convinced that it would be so foolish that she must inevitably fail to restrain her laughter over it. "I was astonished, seeing you so suddenly," murmured the prince. "How did you know who I was? Where had you seen me before? And why were you so struck dumb at the sight of me? What was there so overwhelming about me?" "Oh, ho, ho, ho!" cried Ferdishenko. "Now then, prince, my word, what things I would say if I had such a chance as that! My goodness, prince, go on." "So should I in your place, I've no doubt," laughed the prince to Ferdishenko, then continued, addressing Nastasia. "Your portrait struck me very forcibly this morning. Then I was talking about you to the Epanchins, and then in the train, before I reached Petersburg, Parfen Rogojin told me a good deal about you, and at the very moment that I opened the door to you, I happened to be thinking of you, when there you stood before me." "And how did you recognize me?" "From the portrait." "What else?" "I seemed to imagine you exactly as you are. I seemed to have seen you somewhere." "Where? Where?" "I seem to have seen your eyes somewhere, but it cannot be. I have not seen you. I never was here before. I may have dreamed of you, I don't know." The prince said all this with manifest effort, in broken sentences, and with many drawings of breath. He was evidently much agitated. Nastasia Philipovna looked at him inquisitively, but did not laugh. "Bravo, prince!" cried Ferdishenko, delighted. At this moment a loud voice from behind the group which hedged in the prince and Nastasia Philipovna divided the crowd, as it were, and before them stood the head of the family, General Ivolgin. He was dressed in evening clothes, his moustache was dyed. This apparition was too much for Gania. Vain and ambitious almost to morbidness, he had had much to put up with in the last 2 months, and was seeking feverishly for some means of enabling himself to lead a more presentable kind of existence. At home he now adopted an attitude of absolute cynicism, but he could not keep this up before Nastasia Philipovna, although he had sworn to make her pay after marriage for all he suffered now. He was experiencing a last humiliation, the bitterest of all at this moment, The humiliation of blushing for his own kindred in his own house.